Okay, well, let's get started. First, let me move this camera a minute. I can get a little more comfortable. The date today is February 19th, 2011. And what day were you born in?
I was born August 19th, 1923. Do we need those upper lights on? Okay.
So, how old will that make you today?
I'm 87 and a half.
1.5. Oh, they always say after 85 you start adding halves on like you did when you were younger. Then you used to subtract halves. So 87.5, okay?
So I was born in the upstairs apartment of my grandparent Scheidelman's three bedroom, three apartment, three, they had three apartments in the place.
And what was the address there?
95 Whitesboro Street, Yorkville. And the building is still there.
You say that was your grandfather's?
I beg your pardon?
Whose house was it?
My grandparent, Scheidelman,
What was their full names?
Philip Scheidelman and Louise Goodheinz Scheidelman.
Mm-hmm.
They had a large apartment on the main floor, and this was an upper apartment. Then there was a smaller apartment in the building that they used to lend out to destitute family members.
And how old was your parents when you were born?
My father was just 20 the day before I was born, and my mother was 19 just the month before I was born.
Any idea how old your grandparents were at that day?
No, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we lived there for 2 years,
What did you say the address was?
95 Whitesboro Street, Yorkville. So after 2 years, my parents built a home on the corner of Kellogg and Noyes in Utica.
So when he was 22, he built his first home?
I'm sorry, Chris, I can't hear you.
When he was 22, he built his first home?
It was a two-family home, so they got rent from the other side. And I grew up there. My parents were pretty strict. I was never able to go more than 2 blocks from my home. The 2-block distance was the Pixley Parkway, Pixley Playground. I went there in the winter and ice skating. And in the summertime, they had a lot of activities there, swings and so forth, but mostly we went to Inlet in the summer, so I didn't have much time there. Also, I was very limited in my friends because of not being able to go more than 2 blocks away from home. So the friend that I spent the most time with was Gloria Allen. She was as different from me as night from day. She was a very beautiful child with long black curls and blue eyes. And her mother was preparing her for Hollywood. Her mother had the buyer from J.B. Wells, the only department store in town, go to New York City and buy out her clothes. So she had all these frilly clothes, and she was a little bit taller than me, so when she outgrew them, I inherited the clothes, which were definitely not my style. I liked climbing trees and walking in puddles and that sort of thing, not pre-Hollywood sort of thing. So I went to the first opening class in Sacred Heart School. Actually, I had watched my grandfather go by our home and my uncles as they were building the school when I was only 3 years old. When I just turned 4, I went to the school. I was the youngest one in the class. There was one other girl about my age, Camille Austin. All the rest were at least a year older. But I enjoyed the school and I enjoyed the nuns, and there were a couple of lay teachers, a Miss Gasson who was very nice. And I always felt very close to the Lord. When I was only in maybe the second grade, I made up a prayer group, a prayer book. I wrote it out, all the indulgences I could find. And a lot of the other students thought that was quite interesting, and they'd ask to borrow it every once in a while. About the same time, I felt that the Blessed Mother was my real mother, and I felt very close to her. So when I finished Sacred Heart School, I went to,
How many grades were in Sacred Heart?
I beg your pardon?
How many grades were?
Eighth grade.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember whether I went to kindergarten or not, I'm not sure.
Did they separate the boys from the girls?
No, we were all in one class.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished that school, I went to St. Francis de Sales, which was maybe about 4 miles away. I'm not very good on distances, but anyways, most of us walked. St. Francis, students either went to St. Francis de Sales or Utica Free Academy, so we walked most of the way together.
So you're still living in the same house?
Yes, in the same house. I was never allowed an alarm clock, so I always got to bed early so I'd be awake on time because I had this long walk ahead of me.
How long was it?
I think it was about 4 or 5 miles. Someday we should measure it. But I was always a good student, but I was always a cut-up in class. Betty Sexton and I used to do everything possible to get into trouble. And every month they had report cards, and it was A, B, C, or D. She and I always got D. We would do things like get into the back of the closets and put pepper in everybody's sandwiches, or we would, during what was supposed to be a study period, we'd ask to be excused to go to the bathroom, but we were actually going next door to the Knights of Columbus to have lunch with the boys over there. The boys and girls were separated, and they had it figured out so that the boys came to school at a different time, left at a different time, had lunch at a different time, so you supposedly never saw them. But one day, Sister Seraphine called up my father, and he kept saying, "Oh, she did she, sister? Oh, really, sister?" So Sister Seraphine also called Betty Sexton's parents, and both of us were grounded. So we decided that the next month we were going to get A+ on our report cards. We sat with our hands folded the whole month, never turned our head to the side or did a single thing. Everybody's trying to get us to get going, but we were determined to get this A+. When the report cards came out, we both got D again. So from then all hell broke loose. We decided we weren't going to try anymore. So after my sophomore year, my parents built a new home in Whitesboro.
All right, before we get into the new home, what about your brothers? When did they come along?
Just about the time my parents built the home in Kellogg Ave, my brother Shai was born. He's just 2 years younger than me. And then Ronnie...
What do you mean? About the time he bought...
We moved to Kellogg Ave when I was 2.
Right.
So
What was
Shai
the
was
address
born
on Kellogg Ave? What was the address on...
I think it was 1217. It was the corner of Kellogg and Noyes. At just about the time Shai was born.
So he's
Ronnie wasn't
two years
born.
younger than you?
2 years. Ronnie wasn't born until 11 years later. So then, at just about that same time, we started going to Inlet for the summer, which was terrific.
This is when you built your first house, when you were 2?
I can't remember how old I was when we first started going.
You were very young,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
So I had one good friend up there, name was Midge Schaller. We had sort of a little gang, and there were 2 fellows in it, Malcolm and Duncan Cameron, who were brothers, and then we had a full-blooded Indian friend, his name was Bob Wilkins. And I just had a lot of freedom there. My mother, after we had breakfast, she didn't really say I had to be home until supper time, so we'd have the whole day free to roam the Adirondacks, we'd climb mountains, we'd walk to Limekiln Lake where they had a high diving board, we'd practice all kinds of dives off of that. We'd climb up the toboggan slide and inlet, lay on the top of that for sunbathing. We just had wonderful fun. A couple of times we had what we called circuses. The only toy that I had up there was a trapeze in the backyard, and I learned to do quite a few tricks on that. So we'd have a little circus, sort of, charge the other kids in the neighborhood to come, and we'd sell lemonade, and I did tricks on this thing. But it was really a wonderful free time, and we would swim every day, just about. On Fourth Lake, we had this other friend, Bob Hall, and his grandfather owned the Wood Hotel. So we had carte blanche there. We were swimming there every day and diving for little white saucers. Bread and butter place, really. It was a great time. Then, when I was finished a sophomore year in high school, we moved to Whitesboro, where my parents had built a new home. When I got to Whitesboro, I felt really out of it, because I'd worn a uniform all through St. Francis de Sales. We were forbidden to wear makeup. I knew nothing about how to dress, how to put on makeup, how to fix my hair, how to talk to boys, just nothing. And one day this gal came along who's one of the most popular girls in school, Natalie Primo. And she said to me, I could do a lot for you. Some people thought I should be insulted, but I was delighted that somebody was paying attention to me finally. So she took me home with her and she showed me how to curl my hair, how to dance, how to set my hair in cologne. So when we're dancing with the boys, it would just smell wonderful. Taught me how to use makeup, everything.
This is Whitesboro High School?
Whitesboro High School.
So the last 2, junior, senior year, you went to Whitesboro High School.
Right.
Okay. Where was that located?
It's right on Riscony Boulevard there.
Okay.
So Natalie was my best friend for the next 2 years, and she was wonderful to me. And I went to her house a lot and stayed overnight. We went to dances seems like every Friday and Saturday night all year long. We'd always find out where the dances were and went. So I was kind of the new kid on the block, and with all Natalie's help, I became pretty popular. So then Natalie said to me, you should go to Cornell. I was really a good student. I graduated 4th in my class at Whitesboro, over 200 in the class.
You went from D's to A's?
Well, it was deportment.
Yeah.
I was always a good student, but deportment was always a poor thing. They didn't have deportment at Whitesboro, fortunately. So nobody had talked to me about going to college. My parents didn't know anything about it. Even the teachers who saw I was doing well, nobody except Natalie. So she says, I think you should go to Cornell. And she said, your family can afford it. And she says, I'll write your application for you. So she did. And that year in the College of Human Ecology, which at that time was called Home Economics, there were 1,000 applications and they only considered 100. I was one of the 100 because of Natalie's help. So then after a while, I was doing all this dating, and very popular at the dances. Natalie says, well, you should be thinking about who you want to marry. And I said, marry? I hadn't given a single thought to marriage. I was just having a whirlwind time. So she says, I think Jack Droz is the best one for you. So I started thinking, she's really right. All these other guys are just fun guys or so forth, but nobody you'd want to be connected with the rest of your life.
You didn't tell us how you met Jack Droz yet.
What?
You haven't told us how you met Jack Droz yet.
Oh, okay. So, one of the fellows I was quite infatuated with his name was Fran. And he was over at the house visiting me one day. And the phone rang, and it was this fellow, Judd Dunn, on the other end, asking me to go to a formal dance. I'd never gone out with Judd Dunn. I didn't know him at all, but he was a big basketball star. All the girls thought he was somebody special.
And how old were you now?
16. So
I think you said 15 yesterday, but
maybe I was 15. Do I think I was 16? I'm not sure. I think I was 16. So I was oohing and eyeing and saying, oh, Judd, I would just love to and all this, because Fran was sitting there and I just wanted to make him jealous. So anyways, I went to this dance. And this Judd Dunn said, now there's a lot of wolves here tonight, so we're not going to trade dances with anybody. So I didn't like the idea of dancing with one person the whole night. I'd never done anything like that. But at intermission, when he went to get my coat, Jack Droz came over. And I started talking with him and asking him about that little gold pin he was wearing in his lapel, which was a Delta Upsilon pledge pin from college.
And what was your first impression of Jack Droz?
I thought he was quite handsome and charming.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the Lord told him that night, before he even talked to me, that this is the girl you're going to marry. So we went out every night the rest of the Christmas vacation that he was home on from Marietta College. So then we were writing to each other and so forth, and then he came home the next summer.
What about the party when he came over to your house?
What about what?
What about when he came over to your house, called you up and...
Yes, the next night after the dance with Judd Dunn, he called up and he said, this is Butch Bannigan. And a bunch of us fellas were disappointed we didn't get to meet you last night, so we want to come over. I said, no, my mother wouldn't. I said, my parents were out, but I said, my parents never let me have fellas in like that alone. So I thought it was just a big joke, because I knew it wasn't Butch Bannigan, so I went to bed. A little while, the doorbell rang. They said, it's okay, we brought a girl. So they had about 6 fellas. So I sat out in the den talking to Ray Tritton, whom I'd heard a lot about, and Jack Droz, whom I didn't know anything about, and the rest of them. Mike Costello was one, and I think another one was Betty Sexton's brother, Bill Sexton, climbing in and out the front windows, eating the candy canes off the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff.
Had they been drinking?
I doubt it. We weren't really a drinking group. I don't think so. So then I had, Judd Dunn had asked me to go out New Year's Eve. And I didn't happen to have a date, and he was going to a big party, so I thought that'll be okay. I'll go to that. So Jack Droz asked me where I was going New Year's Eve, and I told him. So he says, I'll be there. So I spent most of the evening with Jack. Judd Dunn was in love with this other girl. He was just trying to make her jealous anyways. So that was fun. So I went out with Jack every night the rest of the vacation. So from there, after I graduated from high school, I went to Cornell, where I was so marvelously accepted. When I got to Cornell, I kind of thought, I'd been really a nobody back in grade school or high school, especially the first 2 years. So I felt like the Lord was telling me, I've given you some good characteristics and you can be a somebody. So I went through rushing, and there are 13 sororities the way I remember it. The one I thought was the best was Kappa Alpha Theta. So I joined that, and luckily they also wanted me. It had to be a dual thing.